Calling from a Skype number overseas. Who's this?
Hello, this is Matthew calling from London. Can you hear me?
Yes. Nomi, can you hear him?
I can hear him.
Okay. Matthew, what's on your mind?
Brilliant. I've got a couple of things, but deal with them as you want to. First thing, don't really want you to respond to it now, but we shouldn't celebrate just because this crisis is happening that Trump's ratings will go down. Boris Johnson's ratings have gone up, and so have Trump's. In a crisis, people look for certainty, and they want to believe that the leader has a clue. Now, we both know that's not true in this case, but it'll take a while for people to realize that the crisis is being mishandled.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say this, that if you look at the polling, every leader who has been hit by this, their polling numbers have shot up. Now, Donald Trump's has not gone up as much as most, but he is at his highest approval rating since becoming president.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. The wanting to believe that your leader has the country's best wishes at heart is a completely normal thing for even Democrats to believe. The other thing I just wanted to warn you to look out for is that you should not rely too heavily on the deaths versus cases numbers for the US for a couple of reasons. One, states that are controlled by Republicans now, there are probably people who are going to try and downplay the number of cases and or deaths. And the key trick is if someone is poor, they don't go to a hospital or they die at home.
Right.
If there's a shortage of tests, you don't actually need to do anything to deflate the numbers. All you have to do is not work hard to get every corpse tested for cause of death.
Right. And that's happening. I mean, that's definitely happening in these early numbers. There's a lot of people who are dying at the hospital, and they just don't waste a test on them.
Sure.
And they're not recorded.
Just to add to that, I'm not going to bash China. They've done the right thing, but we should also take the Chinese numbers with a pinch of salt, because again, whether it's the US or China or someone like Viktor Orban or Putin, the idea that an authoritarian style leader will voluntarily tell negative news and inflate it about themselves is madness. So take a lot of numbers with a pinch of salt.
Yep, I agree.
Just like Donald Trump is doing. I mean, a week ago he thought we were done with the crisis.
Yeah, so then the last thing, it's a couple of things, but I won't take too long. You guys can pick up on whatever you'd like to do on that. There's a journalist I've spoken about before called Gwyn Dyer, who I really respect, and he talked about some things which may not change forever, but they probably will be big changes following on from the crisis. The first thing is that the air in China and India has been clearer and will remain clearer because of the lockdown. And citizens will notice that because it's so stark compared to normal. Having been to Beijing, I can attest that like the air there is noticeably cleaner just in pictures compared to when I went there. And those citizens will probably want that clean air back, which is a huge positive. Yeah. Another big thing that you would appreciate is that what this crisis has really revealed is that austerity is a choice that's ideological and political, as opposed to an economic choice where we don't have the money. Right. We have the money. Right-wing governments around the world have pumped trillions into their economies in response to the crisis, and will continue to do so. So, even when business goes back to quote unquote normal, I think a lot of people will realize that, like, for example, London still has homeless people, and the hotels are empty because there's no one staying in them. But the country just decided that there would be no homeless people on the street in London anymore. And that was like done overnight. That wasn't something that was in the manifesto of any of the parties to do immediately. We've ignored it for so long, but now the crisis happens. We realize, oh, fuck. People who live on the street have multiple health problems. Right. And there's no way they can self-isolate. And they sit outside our corner shops and our supermarkets coughing on people. Jesus. Maybe we should do something for these folks. And I think the thing that might flow from that, but you can take your view on it, is that the action around the economy might reveal that actually, if we can deal with this crisis and choose to deal with it, then there's no reason that we can't necessarily choose to deal with the climate crisis.
Right.
So there are lots of people who haven't gone to work because of the crisis who will now try and remote work. Now, obviously, there's going to be more white collar. When things go back to normal, quote unquote, businesses will try and do business as normal. But I think there are a lot of people who are going to accept, no, sorry, I don't need to go into the office every week for 4 to 5 days. I can come in the one day of the week we actually need our sales meeting or whatever, and I'm going to remote work the rest of the time.
I think that's going to go.
I'm going to leave you there, and you can pick up on that where you want.
Appreciate the call. I mean, I would start with the last one. I think that's going to go both ways. I think there's going to be managers who are going to say, like, I don't need to bring people into the office. Right. And that cuts down on my expenses. I think that's definitely going to happen. The air quality thing, people in LA have been telling me, like, the sky's never been so blue in LA. And so let's hope that there are some things that.
But it's also the white collar workers are the ones who are going to get frustrated and go back into their, likely to go back to their old habits if they have the ability to do so. And I don't know. I mean, I think that this is, on one hand, yes, it's revealed that we have these huge flaws in our infrastructure, in supporting our citizens, and that the neoliberal arguments are completely bogus and bullshit. But at the same time, while this crisis, the immediate crisis, the Band-Aid is pumping money in some ways in other countries, not as much as we need here. It also shows that the crisis is distracting. I mean, in New York State in particular, which is the only state I can really speak on, Cuomo, while the lights are on, is talking about pumping money into the crisis, but when the lights are off, he's trying to balance his budget through austerity.
Yeah,
so
cutting Medicaid.
Distraction. Yeah. So it's also a good distraction so that what happens, when everybody's focused on this, they can do austerity and other measures. And then of course the consequences are often, when we have these crises, that you have, extreme forms of capitalism and new, financial models that come about as after the crises hit. So I don't know if I buy it entirely that people have woken up to.
I agree with that. And I would also say that, and I think like that same impetus that he started off the conversation with by saying, like, you want your leaders to do well. I mean, Orban in Hungary has just been basically, it's like, I'm not sure which episode I just saw, all the Star Wars with Saul, but it was the one maybe episode 1, the fourth one they made, where you just watch the Senate give all the powers to the would-be dictator. That's what we just watched in Hungary, seems to me. But I would add, not only is there situations where there, we should say that Cuomo was trying to cut Medicaid before this,
right?
In New York State, and they're just continuing on with that process. But there was something this came up in the interview. Nancy Pelosi, there's a lot of different asks that they could get in this fourth phase of the stimulus, and mark my words, the one that is guaranteed to be in there is going to be a reversal on the salt taxes, salt exemptions in New York State and other blue states. Now, this is a situation where in these states, you have high tax states, and the wealthy people in these states would get deductions for paying state and local taxes. And I think, I don't know if mortgage is rolled into the SALT taxes, but just in the state and local taxes deductions, the vast majority, I think you're talking about $70 billion worth of money that is being taxed under this. 40 billion of that goes to millionaires, and the rest goes to people who are making above $200,000. So this is not like helping out the working class or the middle class. I mean, I guess you could argue $200,000 in New York City,
right.
But whatever. If you want to make it even, targeted 40, like well over 60% of this is going to millionaires. I'm sorry, just not. Should not be a priority. If you want to give tax cuts and tax savings, you give it to people who are going to go out and spend it the next day.
That's right.
They're going to buy food. They're going to pay for rent. They're going to pay for utilities. They're going to maybe go see a movie, God forbid, whatever it is. Not at this point, we're going to see a movie, but you know what I mean? Rent one on iTunes, whatever it is. And, there's a whole host of other things that are far more important to put in there. Rick Hasen was talking about, vote by mail.
Yeah.
That would be something, if you're going to, you have a certain amount of political capital, spend it on that to get these tax cuts for wealthy people. Not worth it, but they will sneak this stuff into that bill. And the thing is, like, I wouldn't even have a problem with sneaking in these goodies if there were some other better things. Like, you want to do those tax cuts, the SALT thing, whatever. Get into the, stop using your chits on that, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want the Republicans to put that in, and you get in response for it, we're giving $2,000 to people for, every month for 6 months or something. Okay. But that is the thing that drives me a little bit crazy. And that is the idea that they're going to sneak in this stuff, and they're going to actually expend some of the political capital to do it, and it doesn't really help anybody.
Well, what's really wealthy people. I mean, this isn't happening in Congress. I mean, the argument's being made federally, but in New York right now, Cuomo's also refusing to do rent freezes, and it's mind-blowing because he doesn't actually have an argument. And so activists are bringing this up because he froze mortgages. And so if the argument, was, well, then your homeowners or your maybe it's a small real estate owner who owns multifamily, well, their mortgages are frozen. There's absolutely no argument as to why you don't freeze rents. And if you want to stimulate the economy, this is a consumer-based economy, as you just said, you have to actually stimulate it with the working people that are spending money. So it just doesn't mathematically make sense to me that they're not even willing to budge the tiniest bit on basic necessities in a time of crisis.
This is Cuomo screwing the city.
Yep.
That's what
absolutely.
it is.
He's selling the city out.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Totally.